6 matches. 6 entirely different stories wearing the same basic uniform of football. From the rocky peninsula of Gibraltar to the grand theatres of European qualification, from the Horn of Africa to the banks of the Nile, and from the sun-baked pitches of the Mediterranean to the charged atmosphere of a Polish stadium demanding answers. Latvia silenced Gibraltar, Luxembourg held Malta to a share of the spoils, South Sudan stole something precious from Djibouti, and Arab contractors cancelled each other out before the break, Italy reminded Northern Ireland of the gulf that still exists, and Poland survived Albania's considerable threat to take all 3 points. But survival, silencing, stealing, and reminding, none of those words appear in a scoreline. And that is precisely why the story behind the numbers always matters more than the numbers themselves. Gibraltar 0-2 Latvia pre-match. What is it about Gibraltar that makes football here feel like something conducted at the very edge of the known world? The ground sits at the foot of a rock that has witnessed centuries of military history, geopolitical tension, and human drama, and yet somehow football still arrives here every matchday and demands to be taken seriously. Does that context make the players feel the weight of the occasion differently, or does the whistle simply erase all of that the moment it sounds? Latvia arrive with the quiet confidence of a side that has done this before, traveled to difficult locations, absorbed the strangeness of the environment, and found a way to be professional regardless. But professionalism is a muscle, not a talent, and the question is always whether it has been exercised enough recently to hold under the specific pressure this occasion presents. First half Gibraltar begin with a determination that their modest FIFA ranking never quite captures. Why does every team ranked low on paper still somehow find a way to make the first 20 minutes uncomfortable for the visitor? The answer probably has something to do with pride, and pride is the one resource that no ranking system has ever successfully quantified. Latvia weather that early storm with a composure that raises an interesting question: have they seen this script so many times that it no longer affects them, or is there something specific in their preparation that makes early pressure feel manageable rather than threatening? The crowd watches, waits, and wonders. The first goal arrives through Latvian quality rather than home side error, and that distinction matters more than people acknowledge. A well-worked move, a run timed to perfection, and a finish that the goalkeeper has absolutely no complaint about. Those are the components of a goal that speaks to genuine superiority rather than mere fortune. 1-0. Gibraltar now face the oldest question in football for a lower-ranked nation: do you chase the game, or do you protect your dignity? Second half Latvia answer that question for them in the second half by adding a second goal of such clean, uncomplicated quality that it feels almost instructional. This is what happens when a team is better organized, better prepared, and more ruthless in the moments that matter. 2-0. The game is settled, the points are confirmed, and yet Gibraltar keep going because that is all they have ever done. And is there not something worth examining in that refusal to stop? What exactly drives a football nation of 70,000 people to keep competing when the gap in quality is this visible? The final whistle says 2-0. Latvia take 3 points and leave, but Gibraltar remain, and they will be back, and somehow that continuity feels like its own kind of victory. Malta 1-1 Luxembourg pre-match. Two small nations. Two football programs that have spent decades existing on the fringes of European competition, absorbing heavy defeats, learning difficult lessons, and slowly, almost invisibly, building something more resilient. When Malta host Luxembourg, there is a specific undercurrent of respectability about the occasion, two sides that genuinely believe they belong, even when the broader football world has not always agreed. Which of them is right about that belief today? Luxembourg have been one of European football's quiet success stories in recent years, and quiet success stories are always the most interesting kind because nobody sees them coming until they have already arrived. Does Malta respect that development enough, or will familiarity with Luxembourg's limitations from years gone by cloud the preparation? First half Malta take the lead, and the question the goal immediately raises is whether it reflects a genuine tactical advantage or a moment of individual quality that tells us nothing about the overall shape of this contest. The finish is good enough to demand respect, but the manner in which Luxembourg respond in the minutes following suggests they are not remotely derailed. Why does conceding a goal sometimes appear to focus a team rather than unsettle them? Luxembourg are moving the ball with a fluency that Malta find increasingly difficult to contain, and that fluency raises a broader question about where exactly this Luxembourg side has developed its technical identity. Someone, somewhere, has been doing significant work on this football program, and watching them play here makes you want to know exactly what that work looked like. The equalizer arrives before halftime, and it is thoroughly deserved. Luxembourg work the ball into a dangerous position with a patience that belies their status as visitors, and the finish is composed enough to make it look almost routine. 1-1. The dressing rooms at halftime contain two teams that each genuinely believe the winner is still available to them. Second half. The second half is a chess match between two evenly matched sides, and chess matches in football are fascinating precisely because the tension is entirely internal. Nothing dramatic is happening on the pitch, and yet the drama is everywhere, in every clearance, every blocked cross, every moment where a chance is created but not taken. Why does football at this level so frequently produce the one scoreline that satisfies nobody and yet is entirely fair? 1-1 at the final whistle. Both nations take a point. Both will look at this result and find something to feel positive about, and both will find something to feel frustrated about, and that dual reality is perhaps the most honest reflection of where both programs currently sit. Not failing, not succeeding, competing, and in football, competing is always the beginning of something. Djibouti 0-1 South Sudan pre-match. South Sudan is one of the youngest nations on earth, having only declared independence in 2011, and their football program carries all the extraordinary complexity of a country still finding its identity in almost every conceivable dimension. So what does it mean for South Sudan to travel to Djibouti and compete in a competitive international fixture? Is this simply football, or is it something considerably larger than football wearing football's clothes? Djibouti sit at the intersection of Africa and the Middle East, a small nation with an enormous strategic significance in global geopolitics, and yet here on the football pitch all of that external weight falls away and it becomes about 22 players and a ball. Does that reduction to simplicity feel like a relief, or does the pressure of representing a nation somehow travel through even the most basic sporting contest? First half. The match begins tentatively, two nations feeling each other out with a caution that speaks to mutual respect and mutual uncertainty. Neither side is willing to open up early, and that caution creates a first half that is defined more by what does not happen than by what does. But why is restraint so rarely discussed as a tactical choice in football? The decision not to attack can be just as deliberate and sophisticated as any pressing pattern or set-piece routine. The goal that decides this game arrives in the second half, but the first half plants the seed of it. South Sudan are finding spaces on the left side of the pitch with a regularity that Djibouti's defensive shape is not accounting for, and that gap, small, seemingly manageable, is the gap that wins matches when it is exploited at the right moment. Second half. South Sudan take the lead and the manner of it is precisely what the first half threatened. The left channel opens up exactly as it has done several times before, the delivery is accurate, and the finish is convincing. 1-0. Now the question falls entirely on Djibouti. Do they have the tactical flexibility to change what is happening, or are they locked into a shape that South Sudan have already decoded? The answer is unfortunately for the home side that they cannot find a way through a South Sudan defensive structure that becomes increasingly organized as the lead is protected. The final whistle delivers 1-0 to South Sudan, and somewhere in that result is a story about a young nation's football program quietly, determinedly, building something real. How long before the wider world starts paying proper attention? Z0-0 Arab Contractors, half-time pre-match. Egyptian club football between two sides of this stature is never simply a game. It is a conversation between two identities, two sets of supporters, two tactical philosophies competing for the right to claim superiority in a league where no points are ever given freely. Z and Arab Contractors arrive at this fixture knowing that a half-time scoreline of 0-0 tells you almost nothing about what has actually happened, and yet here we are at the interval and the board shows precisely that. What has been going on, and why does 0-0 sometimes feel more eventful than a 4-goal thriller? Halftime reflection. The first half has been a tactical exercise of genuine complexity. Both sides have probed, both have retreated, both have found moments where a goal looked entirely possible, and both have found those moments end without reward. Is this a stalemate, or is it simply two well-organized teams refusing to make the mistake that the other is waiting for? Arab Contractors have looked dangerous in transition, which raises the obvious question: why has that danger not translated into a goal? The chances have been there, the quality in the final third has been visible, and yet the goalkeeper, the post, the last-ditch defensive intervention, something has intervened every single time. Is that Z's defensive quality, or Arab Contractors' finishing quality letting them down? Z have had their own moments, and the most interesting thing about 0-0 at halftime in a game of this intensity is how differently each side will interpret it. To one team it might feel like an opportunity preserved, to the other it might feel like an opportunity missed. Which interpretation is correct will only become clear in the second half, and that is precisely what makes the interval in a game like this one of the most genuinely dramatic pauses in sport. 45 minutes remain. Everything is still possible. Italy 2-0 Northern Ireland pre-match. When Northern Ireland face Italy, there is a question that hangs over the occasion before a ball is even kicked, not whether Italy will win, but whether Northern Ireland can make the winning uncomfortable enough to mean something. That is not defeatism. That is the honest tactical reality of facing one of international football's great powers, and acknowledging that reality is the first step towards doing something about it. Italy arrive with the weight of an entire footballing culture behind them. The tactical sophistication, the historical expectation, the almost genetic insistence on defensive organization combined with clinical attacking execution, all of it travels with an Italian squad wherever they go. Does that weight ever feel like a burden, or has it long since become simply the air they breathe? First half Northern Ireland set up to make Italy work, and for the opening stages of this match they succeed in that aim. The defensive shape is tight, the pressing is organized, and Italy find that the spaces they normally occupy with such ease are simply not available. How long can that last? That is the only real question of the first 20 minutes. The answer is that it lasts until Italy decide to change the tempo, which they do with the kind of unhurried authority that separates elite international sides from the rest. The first goal is a thing of controlled beauty, patient build-up, sudden acceleration, and a finish that the goalkeeper can only watch. 1-0. Does Northern Ireland's shape hold now, or does the concession force them to open up in ways Italy will ruthlessly exploit? Second half Italy's second goal arrives with an inevitability that is simultaneously impressive and slightly brutal to witness. Northern Ireland have committed more players forward in search of an equalizer, and Italy, as Italy always do, have noted that commitment and prepared their response. The counterattack is devastating in its speed and precision. 2-0. The game is over as a contest. But Northern Ireland do not stop running, because they never stop running, and that refusal is the thing their supporters carry home with more pride than any result. 2-0 at the final whistle. Italy are satisfied. Northern Ireland are not, and that dissatisfaction, properly channeled, is exactly the fuel that competitive football programs run on. Poland 2-1 Albania pre-match. Poland vs Albania carries attention that the neutral observer might not immediately anticipate, but anyone following either nation's recent trajectory understands completely. Albania have been building quietly and convincingly, and Poland know it. That knowledge changes the atmosphere before kickoff in ways that are visible if you know what to look for: the extra focus in the warm-up, the deliberate intensity of the pre-match team meeting, the way the crowd settles into a different kind of quiet before the whistle sounds. First half Poland take control early, and their first goal is the product of genuine quality, a combination of movement and passing that opens Albania's defensive structure in a way the visitors would not have planned for. 1-0. But does Albania look beaten? Not for a single moment, and that is what makes this fixture so compelling from the very beginning. Albania's equalizer arrives, and it is an extraordinary statement of intent. To come to Poland, fall behind, and level within the same half requires a specific kind of belief that cannot be manufactured. It must be built over months and years of competitive experience. Where has this Albanian team found that belief, and how far can it carry them? 1-1 at halftime, and the Polish crowd is being asked a question it did not expect to be asked today. Second half Poland find their winner through a combination of home advantage, crowd energy, and a moment of individual quality that the occasion demands rather than simply produces. The goal comes at a point in the second half when the momentum has been shifting back and forth so frequently that both sets of supporters have essentially abandoned the idea of predicting what happens next. And then it happens: a shot, a deflection, a net that moves, and a stadium that releases all of its accumulated tension in a single roar. 2-1. Albania push for the equalizer with everything they have, and Poland spend the final 15 minutes performing the particular kind of football that requires more mental strength than technical quality. Hold the shape, win the second ball, make the right decision under pressure. Do all of it repeatedly until the referee finally, mercifully, ends it. 2-1 at the final whistle. Poland survive. Albania leave having proved everything except the result. And in football, that distinction is the source of more post-match conversation than any other gap between effort and outcome. 6 matches, 6 different worlds asking 6 versions of the same eternal question: what are you made of when it actually matters? Latvia answered with clinical precision. Luxembourg answered with stubborn resilience. South Sudan answered with disciplined organization. Zed and Arab contractors answered with tactical caution that the second half alone will fully resolve. Italy answered with the authority of a nation that has been answering this question for a very long time. And Poland answered with the particular bravery of a side that nearly lost control of something it could not afford to lose. Football does not grade on effort, it grades on outcome, but the effort is always, always worth watching.